If you're a dad that used to be sharp, dialed in, driven, ambitious, and feel like you could probably do anything all day, every day, but now you sort of feel slightly on the decline, your focus is slipping a little bit. It takes you longer to do things. Maybe you're mentally foggy quite often. Maybe you're avoiding tasks or shifting them around so that you can do them later on and procrastinate on them. Maybe you're just distracted by different things all the time and you feel ultimately like your edge is gone. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to go from feeling foggy to clear and present again. Feeling unfocused and procrastinate to feeling super and hyper focused again. And this is all down to, of course, your life situation. Because ultimately, in your 20s, it was easy. There was little responsibilities and little things going on. And ultimately, you didn't have the job that you do now or the business that you do now. So then going into your 30s and 40s, when you've got kids, you've got a family to look after, you've got the duties of that every single day, morning, evening, weekends. You've also got that level of responsibility at work, the stress and the challenge that that brings. And ultimately, all of this is bringing about a mental and physical load that is far more to carry than what you ever did in your 20s. And so these things, of course, are going to bring about, when we're not really intentional about how we spend our time, they're going to bring about a mental fog, a sort of feeling of distraction, feeling that you can't focus for long periods of time. They're going to bring about this lack of energy and sort of like a drain in life. And again, this is going to make you feel like you've lost your edge, right? When we think about and compare ourselves to who we used to be, we start to wonder, have I lost my edge for good, right? Am I becoming lazy or soft? Is the best version of me behind me, is it only going to get worse? And look, this isn't really about productivity. It's not about becoming more productive. It's not about managing your time better, because ultimately what it's about is how we show up within that time. You can have the best productivity tool in the world plus the best time management tool and put those two together, and yes, they'll give you a great schedule and your ideal week, but they won't give you how you feel within those time blocks and how you operate within that. And that comes from the state, how you show up on a daily basis. And to the high-performing dad, they know that that's one of the most important things, because ultimately, how they show up is how they show up towards their work, their life, their kids, their family, their mates. These fears about who we're becoming can show up as distractions, constantly being distracted. They can show up as tiredness, always feeling drained, and like, even if it's not just all the time, we're just getting to the end of the day and we're just like, I'm absolutely knackered. Or number 3, it's overthinking. Constantly overthinking every single decision or every single action, or getting to the end of the day and just constant thoughts about the work that you left undone or the work that you hadn't done during the day. And so when you're asking these questions like, why can't I focus like I used to get twice the amount done in half the time, or these things, and the kind of scattered energy, the scattered thinking, the scattered focus, the waste of time, being reactive rather than proactive, all of these means that the work's going to drag on, right? And because we're stuck in this negative cycle of, we're feeling a lack of energy, we're feeling a lack of focus, feeling this kind of mental fog. So then we do things that ultimately try and make us feel better. And sometimes that's shifting tasks or doing the easy stuff first. And then, getting home, and it's easier to go on our phones than be present. It's easier to watch TV than it is to have a conversation with our wife, like truthfully. And so we're doing these things to feel better in and of ourselves. And then as time goes on, these get worse and worse and worse, right? Because we need more and more of them to make ourselves feel better. And so the work tasks are dragging on. The evenings are kind of like you're just having these constant overthinking and thoughts around what's been left on the table at work and just like, oh, I should have done this, should have done that, I'll be better tomorrow. And ultimately that never comes, right? You know, and again, then there's the guilt about not working as effectively as you can and not doing as much as you can. But then there's also the guilt about not being as good a dad or husband as you can, and you can't win. There's always this guilt, and these are what dragging you down every single day, just tiny bits at a time, but bit by bit by bit. And of course, ultimately, we're going to end up in burnout. So what's really going on here is distractions are the gateway drug. Emails, Slack if you have it, or whatever the equivalent is. Notifications on our phone, it could even be junk food or alcohol or drugs, right? Actual drugs. They're kind of the stuff outside of work, or, you know, the messages or social media scrolling, that type of thing. And what it is all dopamine hits, okay? We want these hits of dopamine to make ourselves feel better when we're feeling sluggish, right? We just want to go and just feel instantly better instead of delaying that procrastination. And so what we end up doing is context switching. So that means we're going to drain our brain. So this is context switching is basically like, imagine you're Usain Bolt and you're doing the 100-meter sprint, but every 10 meters you need to stop and do your shoelace or change your shoes. That, right, how much longer will it take you to get to the end, right? It's going to take you a very long time. So that's like what happens. Brains can only focus on one task at a time, which means that if we're thinking about something else or even going on to something else, like just quickly see a notification flash up for an email and we quickly click on it, we've had to switch context. And it can take 23 minutes, if not more, to, if we ever get back to it, by the way, if we ever get back that focus, to get focused again. And so what's needed is a bit of a reset on how you approach your time, your focus, and your energy, okay? And so this is what the High Performing Dad program is all about, and it's about schedule, state, and systems, and that's how we approach these time, energy, and focus. But we need to focus in this specific scenario around state and how you show up every single day. Because ultimately, when we're showing up with high energy, higher focus, we get more done in less time, we're more present, and of course, we then have more energy off the back of it anyway. So getting your edge back, how do you actually do that? Well, first of all, like I said, I think it's understanding that you have a lot on, right? And giving yourself the credit for that. That there's a big load here and we don't need to just add more things, okay? This is why the High Performing Dad system is all about getting 10 hours back, because we need to get 10 hours back to kind of add the right things back in our life, right? So we do need to add things, in my opinion, but we can't just add things on top of what you're already doing, because that's not going to work. So we need to cut some noise out, okay? And ultimately, that's not the aim of this video, but cut some of the noise out of the week, okay? Secondly, we need to look at the state. So this is what this video is all about. We're going to look at the state and how you get your edge back, because like I said, when you're high energy, high focus, we're going to actually get more done and feel better for that. So how do we get and change our state? Well, it's our rituals and routines every single day, you know. How are you setting yourself up every single day? Now that is our wake routine. So no matter when you wake up, how are you setting yourself up for success? Is it that you're snoozing, getting up, rushed, got to get to work, you know, kids are there as well, and then you are stressed by the time you get to work already, okay? That's not going to produce optimal focus. Are you just getting up at the last minute just because, you know, you can? Or is it that, you know, you just kind of get up, sort the kids, sort yourself, get out? Now, I'm not a big believer that you need to get up at 4 a.m. and do a massive routine, but I am a big believer in you've got to do what's necessary. And so if it's the case that you've got to get up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m., then to do something, right, to make yourself feel better, then it's key, because ultimately that extra half an hour in bed isn't going to make a difference to your state, okay? Sleep is super important for state, of course it is, but that's not going to make such a big difference. What is how you set yourself up for the day. What routines are you doing? Is there a bit of exercise in there? Is there a bit of meditation or breathing or whatever? Again, I'm not here to dictate to you what you need to do. I'm just here to give you some ideas of what you can do. And it's state first, right? You can think about stuff later on, but if you get to work and you're in a high energy state, you get more done, you're then more productive, you focus throughout the day, there's no energy slumps in the mid-afternoon, then you get home and the thoughts and the overthinking and the mental fog and the constant distractions are not there anymore, because they don't need to be, because you don't need to make yourself feel better. You already feel good, and so you're present at home. You don't need to scroll through your phone. You can put it in a different room. And ultimately, this is why setting these boundaries works with something else. It doesn't just work in and of itself, because the dopamine hits are serving a function. They're serving you to feel better in life, right? And you have to understand that. You can't just... I was a health and fitness coach for 10 years. And one of the big things is food makes you feel good. You can't just ignore that fact. And so if you just try and say, well, I'm going to cut out all the crap, this is why I stuck overweight for years, because I just tried to cut out all the crap when I tried to lose weight. Yeah, I lost weight, but I always put it back on. Instead, when I realized that I could still eat some things that I enjoyed, my whole attitude around food changed, and my relationship with food, and my whole shape changed. I never got overweight again. And this is the fact of the matter with this, right? And how we can do the same thing here. When we are high energy and we have boundaries in place, we manage our state properly. Boundaries is more for systems, but when we manage our state properly, everything else sort of falls into place, because we're going to be doing some stuff that we enjoy, but we're going to be getting that work done and leaving space for later on at home. So we, of course, this is when other pieces of the puzzle fit in, right? Schedule and systems. And we need to systemize these things, which is what the high performance dad does. But also the high performance dad knows schedule is not about time management. Okay, it's about auditing his time, living through his highest priority values and tasks. Okay, he's driven by his highest values. He's driven by his highest priorities. And he's driven by a sense of long-term gratification, not short-term gratification. Okay, so managing the state is going to bring about all of this. And once I still work with a dad who was exactly that, was distracted, was overwhelmed, was stressed all the time, and had a business to manage, had a family. And ultimately, it led to him not being the dad that he wanted to be. It led to him not actually being the owner of a business that he wanted to be. And once we reclaimed state, once we got him living high energy, living high focus, he had more time back to spend with his family, to spend on things that he enjoys, to not have to do work endlessly because he would need to catch up, because he was just so knackered during the day. It wasn't focused work, it wasn't good work. He'd have to do it when the kids had gone to bed. It allowed him to get the work done in shorter blocks of time. And I know that when you're a business owner, you can pretty much, depends on what business you got, you can obviously put your time into how you want. And if you work for someone else, you can't necessarily do that. But if you don't manage work blocks and rest blocks and stay 100% focused in everything that you do in life, and I was talking about context switching earlier, and that's the reason why all this happens, and we start to get drained and mentally fatigued, then we just feel scattered. We feel wired all the time. We feel kind of buzzing and then ultimately that leads to actually being more tired than wired, and that is burnout, when we're just so drained. And you may have been there before, and often that will end in illness, right? When we're ill. So when we feel like we lost our edge, it's all about getting our state back and how you are showing up daily. And the most important thing to that is rituals and routines and what you're doing. Now, there's other stuff off the back of that for sure, but I think that's a really big start. And managing your physical state, your mental state, and your emotional state. And how do you do that? Through rituals and routines every single morning, every single evening, every single day, before work, during work, after work, and setting up these routines, okay? And all of that is just kind of the stuff that you know how to do, you know, getting some good exercise, getting good nutrition. This isn't a health and fitness video, by the way, but they're essential for the physical state. Mental state, okay, it's figuring out how do we do that? Well, mental state is going to be stuff like breath work, or I think, again, if you can start to focus in 100% on tasks and not context switch all the time, that brings about that mental state and mental focus, because your brain doesn't just feel like constantly wired. And then emotional state, again, you know, are we journaling? Are we doing things like that? And are we doing, are we talking about our feelings as well as being able to manage them effectively as well, accept the way we feel? Are we allowing ourselves to feel the emotions and just allow them to be there? Just don't forget, you've got so much on, okay? Try and reclaim some time back. Try when you can focus in 100%. You don't need to get up 3 hours earlier than before to do all these things. 30 minutes, I reckon, is more than enough to get some good routines in and to make yourself feel better. Get some sunlight, get some exercise, get some cold showers if that's your thing, or meditations or breath work. It doesn't have to be much, doesn't have to be long, but doing something is always better than doing nothing. So look, if that's resonated with you in any single way, you can grab my how to get 10 plus hours back for free. The system that I teach the other high performing dads, you can grab that for free. All you need to do is click the link below and grab it. And if you enjoyed it, would always appreciate a subscribe to the channel.